Hey guys, Jack here. Welcome back to the channel. So, what I've noticed is that England's been very poor you know, since they've secured qualification back in November. I mean, they've had friendly wins against Switzerland and Cote d'Ivoire, but really they've not looked convincing in those matches. Even in their qualification process, they were strong, but they didn't. You wouldn't say they were outright the best team. And you can understand that because in the Switzerland and Ivory Coast games that they rotated a lot. Of course, they wouldn't be convincing. They didn't. They had different teams for each of those. And ever since they came back into the Nations League in this particular group, their form and confidence has seemed to plummet. I mean, they had a 1-0, I think it was 1-0 loss to Hungary, draws to Germany away and Italy at home, and then losing to Hungary 4-0. I think it's their worst, it's one of their worst defeats ever internationally. And then obviously in the last few days, they lost 1-0 to Italy. And I think there's a few theories and reasons as to why England have failed to perform in these months prior to the World Cup. I think it's a combination of three things: it's the tactics, personnel, and the psychological issues that England may have, and why I think, if you're going off by the title, why I think they might struggle in this upcoming World Cup. So I'm going to go through the different, the different parts of it, and give you my opinion on it. So first thing I'm going to go over is the tactics. So this is one of their typical lineups during the Euros in 2020, and where they got to the finals. So as you can see here, we have Pickford in goals, a back four of Luke Shaw, John Stones, Harry Maguire, and Kyle Walker. So Shaw and Walker would be typically high energy, creating a lot of chances. So they'd be going up and down the wings, creating overloads on each wing, depending on where the ball is. And then in the middle, we have Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips. Declan Rice, as we saw, kind of more towards the later stages when England tend to bunker, that he'd be one of the key carriers of the ball. There's a few, like especially against Germany when I think they beat them 2-0, where he got the ball and was able to break out of pressure and carry the ball up forward, allow England to push up and obviously cause issues towards the German midfield. And Calvin Phillips would tend to sit back a bit more, was more defensively astute and put in a lot of good challenges. I think he credit to him, he had a great performance during that Euros. Then in the middle was Mason Mount, because he's a good worker off the ball and put a lot of pressure on opposition defenses. And he also could create, but I don't think that was his main role within this England squad. And on the wings, for the most part, was Sterling on the left and Saka on the right. So both of them, obviously right-footed Sterling, left-footed Saka, they'll be able to cut in and cause issues, obviously, and also be able to play, obviously take shots on their side, but also be able to play in Harry Kane, while who would also decide to drop in. And in the Euros finals, it was kind of this general setup, general personnel, but they switched to three in the back. So Kyle Walker came into the middle, and then Kieran Trippier went out into the right. And I think, from what I recall, I think Saka was dropped, to play 5-2-3. And while I've noticed with Southgate is that he tended to play very defensive. And what I mean by that is that he never utilized the attack he had. So what would happen is that the whole team would drop far back, and as a result, they wouldn't know, they'd be too deep to kind of have a good break on goal. Let's just use this team as an example. Like Mount would be back here, Kane would obviously drop back. It would only typically maybe Sterling and Saka, but then again they'd also be coming back to help defend, and so they'd be in this kind of area, kind of behind the halfway line. And once let's say Maguire wins a header, they don't really have a lot of room to push up, to attack, spring and attack. Sterling and Saka obviously very quick, but they obviously, if one of them is further back, should we say, they're not going to be able to carry the ball 80 plus yards and then make a decent decision. I think it's because due to how fatigue can be an issue, and as a result they're going to either skew a shot off target, and maybe like Kane and or Sterling or maybe Mount here in this case. Yes, they get to the box, but by the time that, let's say, Saka, who broke through, gets to here, he's going to be wrecked. He's not going to make a good decision. And even if he makes the right choice of, so say, playing it across, is he going to have the physical capacity to play the correct ball across, the correct way, the right way to, for, let's say, Kane to header it in or volley it. It's a difficult thing to consider. And I think that's what's been an issue now during the Nations League, is that they're sitting back far too much, to being very pragmatic, and as a result, they're not getting ample opportunities to push up. And I think teams have sussed that out. Like, it's the same with any cup team, like a tournament team, and you can understand why Southgate decides this, to play with a bit more pragmatism. I mean, you're only getting your squad for a couple of weeks at a time. The first thing you want to do is create a defensively sound squad. But with the talent that they have, you should be trying to push on a bit more, especially with the attacking talent you have. And when you see this happening, you don't know why he decides to play it like this. And I understand, you want to just, grind out victories. But when a team, let's say for Hungary, who, if you look at, player by player, are inferior to England, but they play with a good tactical identity, and they know exactly what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. I think their striker Salah would just, would occupy two defenders here. And in this case, it could be John Stones because he's the less physical one. And they know exactly how to exploit this defensive block, defensive mid to low block that England have. And yeah, it's, that tactic of sitting very deep, with this team, it doesn't work when it lifts, let's say, Hungary, for example. They're aware of the talent that these, the English have, that they decide to, they'll sit back as well, so that when England do break, they have the numbers to support the team and come back. And I think it's very interesting how the tactics can seem very uninspiring, and why a lot of English fans have been criticizing Southgate for these latest performances. So the next topic I'm going to look at is personnel. So as I touched on before, Southgate seems to underutilize his pool of English players, both within and outside of the squad. So one example I think of is Trent Alexander-Arnold. While he has underperformed this season, you can't ignore that he's been one of England's best right backs of the last couple of years. Definitely the best creative player I've seen in world football. I mean, his ability to create chances on the right hand flank has sealed Liverpool a lot of goals. And I see why Southgate doesn't want to use him, because he doesn't have the, let's say, the defensive nous that the likes of Walker, Trippier and Reece James have. And that's why he's only gotten 17 caps for England. And I think that's just a bit narrow-minded. I know you want to have your own tactics within your international squad, but given their lack of creativity that they've had over the last last few months, is omitting one of your most creative players a good option? And I think, and it's the same with Jadon Sancho. I would say he's more less defensively inclined than the likes of Mason Mount and Raheem Sterling, which I feel like his appearance, that's why he's been omitted to the bench so many times as opposed to starting games, despite his obvious talent. And this has gone back to his Dortmund days, where you can argue he's been one of the best wingers in the world, definitely the best young player in the world. I mean, that's why at the time there's £100 million valuations before the COVID pandemic. And I think the issue as well is that Southgate is in my opinion anyway, he doesn't seem to look beyond Europe, beyond England for his talent. A good example here is Fikayo Tomori, who had to win the Scudetto with AC Milan before he got called up for June. And And while I understand what that Premier League is argued as the best league in the world, I just can't say it's that much better than Serie A. And Tomori got a cap when he was kind of a bit part semi-regular player for Chelsea. And yeah, he performed very well for Chelsea, don't get me wrong. But I mean, not he wasn't a first name of the team sheet starter for Chelsea, and he managed to get a cap under Southgate. And it took him to a year and a half at AC Milan, who were competing for the title in the first his first half season, and competed and were were the best defensive team in Serie A with AC Milan this last season 21-22, that got them to win the Scudetto. And it only was then Southgate was like, yeah, I'll get him, I'll take him. I just don't understand that, because he's performed in the Champions League as well. So it's not as if like, Milan, it wasn't as if like he wasn't performing, he was performing just in the league. He was doing well. And I know AC Milan got knocked out in the group stages, but they were very unfortunate with their draws and just the results that they came out of it. Tammy Abraham is another example where he's arguably been one of the best strikers in Serie A. Just purely out of he's strong, he's fast, he's tall. Like you don't like a lot of things you don't want to deal with as a defender, but he's not featuring for Gareth Southgate at all. And I understand Harry Kane's there, but would you not want to have that option off the bench? And like, he could have brought him on in the last couple of games for Kane or for Sterling or Saka, just to make a difference. And I understand that his stigma is that the best players play in the Premier League. Now, I understand that that's the argument, but if you looked at previous World Cup squads, not all the best players played in the Premier League. I mean, France had 5 players. I think Germany had 4 when they won it in 2014, and Spain had 4 players as well. And obviously the rest were made up of just different proportions to the other leagues. And I just don't get how you can just kind of omit those other players. And I understand a lot of the majority of English talent play in England, but if you're just going to just ignore the talent outside of your country, I think that's just a bit narrow-minded. And lastly, on the personnel, I think Southgate values loyalty and picks the players based off their previous experiences with England. And I think this is a right thing to do. I mean, Jordan Pickford, he's not been the greatest for Everton. Obviously, he's had a great season so far, and he's always performed for England. So I think that's fine. Have him in. But when I look at Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw, yeah, they've done well for England. But the fact that Luke Shaw hasn't really played much, same as Maguire, and when they've played, they looked shaky. They've looked edgy. Like, I wouldn't take that really as, I wouldn't like to do that first, because I think if you don't have confidence in your own, like, if you don't have confidence, playing for your club, it's not going to translate into your international performances. I don't know, and I think the fact that that Southgate selected those players over the likes of Ben White, Ryan Sessegnon, Tyree Mitchell, Jack Harrison, James Maddison, I think those players have a case to be in the squad. And while I understand having continuity before the World Cup is a good idea, I think if you don't offer players a chance to earn their spot, I just think that's just a missed opportunity. So my last point in all this, and I think is probably the most important, is the psychological effect over the last couple of years. I mean, you've seen England obviously got to the World Cup final, but I'd say, obviously losing in the World Cup semi-final, and got to the Euros final losing on penalties. I say that it's taken a huge mental, tax on the players. I mean, obviously in such high pressure situations, you're just going to feel mentally, tired. And I think that's what a lot of these players are going through. I've seen, like, for example, I found when I watched the game. Like Sterling did okay. He didn't look great. Foden just looked out of it, and Saka was out of position. I can't blame for that. But also, Rice didn't look his best. James didn't look kind of focused attacking wise, and I think that could be a case is that they just were completely mentally taxed. But also it might be how they're not being they're not feeling jeopardized in their positions. I mean, take a look at like Harry Maguire here, for example. He might think, oh, because Southgate's calling me up now. Like, is there like I know my spot's guaranteed in the summer. I don't need to worry about I don't need to worry about my club form because I'll be fine. Because my spot on the plane is secured. I think that can be a huge issue when you're comfortable in a spot. And I think it's the same if you go with any team. Like you see how some players' performances dip because they're not worried about their role. They need to be challenged. And I think, and it reminds me of when David De Gea was having a poor season. I think it was 1920. He wasn't great that season, and it was when Dean Henderson came back and fought for the number one jersey at United that he put a lot that he like he did well to he just challenged De Gea. And I know Henderson was unfortunate with sickness in the last season, but De Gea was probably United's best player last season. And you see why competition within the squad is such an important thing. And I think that's the same with international teams, that if you're guaranteed your spot on the plane, are you gonna kind of put as much effort in now, and then and let's say you put so much effort in now, and let's say you get injured, would you prefer that, or would you say, okay, I'm going to take it easy now and then wait until November and then I'm going to go in as hard as I can? I don't think it's a good idea. And here I have the lineup from their loss against Italy. Like, if you look at that team, like a lot of those players were playing in Euros last year. Like Bellingham, and Bellingham is only in there because is only starting because he doesn't have Southgate doesn't have Calvin Phillips, who's out and injured, and and I hope he does make it onto the plane because he is a talented player. Like the only player there that you can say has earned their spot back is Eric Dyer, who's been brilliant. Has been brilliant at Tottenham as one of the defenders in the back three. So I understand why he's included here. But and like Nick Pope as well, he's only in there through injury to Jordan Pickford, and I think he's a great keeper. I just think that psychological effects can have a huge impact on it. I think it's also just the Nations League. It could be an issue to them. They're glorified friendlies, quite frankly. And obviously after I've said before all the taxing, Euros, World Cup qualification, like you're just not going to be as up for it as you would, for an international tournament. So I understand why they're not really kind of amped for these games. I mean, you're not, they'd probably prefer to be resting or, just go, playing kind of a more high stakes game, or even playing at their club level before the World Cup, then going off with England and playing these games. And I know they're relegated now, but like there's not, they're going to have another opportunity to get to qualify for the Euros a different way. So they probably don't feel like there's as much jeopardy in that as there is, should we say, in World Cup qualification or Euro qualification. What's my conclusion to all of this? I feel like when it comes to November, I think England are going to struggle this World Cup. They have a group with Wales who are, I know they've performed, they haven't really won their games, but they've looked threatening, they've looked dangerous, and they've just been unfortunate with results. The US haven't looked great when they played against Japan there on Friday, and I think that they're facing a similar issue with England in terms of trying to get amped for these games. And then there's Iran who'll probably be up for this. And I think that's the issue, is that England, with this pragmatic approach, and Southgate's defensive first ideas, that likes of the US, Wales, and Iran, they're going to think we have something here. We can get at them. And I think when you have that idea, when you have that mentality, I think that's an issue for the bigger club or the bigger side, because, like, let's say if Wales play Germany, for example, there's going to be a lot of a lot of those players going to be thinking, wow, Germany, they're one of the best teams in Europe. They're one of the best teams in the world. Brazil, even, like, you're just going to be fearful of that. But I don't think I don't think the three nations fear England. And I think this is going to be a difficult task for Southgate, unless he is lifting that trophy. And I think, like, December 20th or 21st, whenever, or I think it's 18th, whatever, whenever the World Cup final happens, unless he's lifting that trophy, fans are not going to want him there. They're going to hate him there. And I think it's going to get slated every time, even if he performs well, because people are going to say we could have had Graham Potter, for example, who is touted as going to be the next England coach, or they just get someone else. And I personally think this could be his last tournament as England manager, and it's a sad ending. Going from being this icon. I mean, everyone wanted everyone wanted the suit vest. After the World Cup, after the Euros, because he brought people so much happiness. I know the Euro final was horrific in terms of crowd issues, but England were together. People were excited to see their nation play. And I think unless he changes his ways for this upcoming tournament, I don't think he's gonna last very long. So I think, my opinion to Southgate, just go for it. Use the attacking players you have. Use your pool of brilliant talent like Jack Grealish, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford, Foden, Sterling, Kane, Abraham, Ivan Toney even. Use these very good attacking players to make an impact. Just go at teams, because I don't think anyone will expect it. They'll expect you to be very defensively, solid. But if you just go at them like that, who knows what might happen. And I think if you play good quality football, people won't mind, people won't mind you going out, as long as you're playing good football. But if you're going out, let's say if they end up going out, let's say in the in the last 16 or in the group, but they're playing this kind of football that they've been playing for the last few months, he's not going to survive. Like, even if he leaves or he gets sacked, like, he won't survive the ridicule or the criticism that they have. So overall, I think that's what he should be doing. And I think that's why I think England will struggle with this upcoming World Cup. So yeah, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be doing my another preview of the match weeks coming up for the Premier League. I might talk about who I'm going to be supporting for the World Cup. I need to find the jersey though. That's the issue. And I will be looking forward to doing some Football Manager content. I think the trailer's going to be coming out soon on the features, and I'm definitely going to do a preview, like a rundown of that. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you like the video, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching, and take care.